and Noakes from the Yoga Health Mandala. This time we're offering a podcast with Victor, who is teaching with Angela Farmer on retreat every year. And I was very privileged to attend their retreat, and I really enjoyed both their energies merging and teaching our group. And this time I asked him a question why he came into yoga. So really enjoy this unfolding of his journey and very humorous attitude to life. Thanks so much for tuning in. So here I am with Victor, and I'm very happy to be in your yoga space. And so the question that I was thinking to ask you is, what made you choose yoga as a way of moving and getting to know yourself?
Is that a real question? Or you just came up with it?
No, I was thinking, we've been thinking about it. Uh-huh. So why you chose yoga as a path?
When I was 12, I found a little booklet of my father that was called Sport in Yoga by Yasudian. I don't know if you know him. He's an Indian man, and he was kind of taken as a tool to get yoga into the West by a Swiss woman. And she wrote a book, and he did the photographs and wrote about the exercises. And he had these white pens. These are really the Indian kind of tied around your willy pens that kind of bring everything out of you and up and into you. And then he had another pair of white stuff on his head tied. So it's like, two things that keep the body in, I would say, wrapped well up. And he was doing all these asanas. So I went into the garden with my white underpants. I didn't have anything on my head, but I liked the idea. And so I imitated all these poses. This was in August. And I did it a few times on hot days. And then I put the booklet back and forgot all about yoga until I was about 25, 26, when I was discovering the artist in me and locked myself out of society. Didn't like the art school, so I only went there 1 year and then decided to rent a space and teach myself. So I did that day and night, and I became very weak in my back. My brother was paralyzed. I sometimes had to look after him and lift him around in his bed. Around 2 o'clock I would sleep on the floor, and he would kind of complain that this lying on one side was too painful, and so I had to stand and lift this guy who was 1.5 years older than I was, but was paralyzed since he was 16. I had to do that. I was by the time 18, 19, 20. But not all the time, only when he came and visited home for 2 weeks or something. But it was enough to ruin my back. Mm. So I had a lot of difficulties with my long spine. And then I asked my father if, I told him I think I should do yoga. And he said, no, just read books, that's enough. Don't do it. That was basically a picture of who he was. He was sitting and reading books and underlining sentences and things like that, and smoking and drinking gin. And but then a week later he found a cutout from, not a cutout, he cut it out from a newspaper, which was an advertisement by Donna Holloman, who just had come back from India and now became Iyenga yoga instead of the wheel of yoga type from Holland, the Polderman yoga. So she actually immediately opened a teacher training course. Well, what did she know? after a few months with Iyenga in India, I she was treated bloody strongly, I could say, really bloody, because, he can be very forceful. And he said, she was the best in the Dutch group, basically, outstanding yoga practitioner since she was very young. And then when she found Iyenga, he told her she was doing everything wrong, which is his normal way, to throw everything out of you and then bring what he wanted into you, which he did. And then so she came, but I could still see there was a lot of this other yoga going on, other things. But after 1.5 years, she left again for India and left me as the one that had to take over her classes that she started in the next town and things like that. And I started to kind of make a small group that we were with her, a small group, to start something that I called the Yoga Work Group, Iyenga Nederland, which is a Dutch thing that I refuse to have any certification, anything. Just I want to have people's enthusiasm for the yoga practice and then see what happens. And so we were going to teach each other every time somebody else of the group. There were 6 people. But after a little while they got fed up and said, it's obvious you're a better teacher or something. And so I became the responsible one. So when we went to London, where Iyenga would come to privately teach Yasudi Menuhin, and he started to have a small group of followers, and then we were the first ones that were exposed to his teaching, which was very experimental. And so we were basically material for him to see what it does on a European body, I guess. Different from the Indians. So he treated us pretty rough and tough, but it was so exciting that we became his followers. And since he picked me out as the yoga teacher, because one of the students in the class before me was asked, "Who is your teacher?" because she did something wrong, apparently. And she said, "Victot Van Kooten," so I had to stand up. And he said, And he kind of ignored me for the rest, of course. And then I was in the next class, and he just milled me. He really pushed me. And the tears were streaming out of my eyes in standing in shoulder balance for 10 minutes. And Donna said, "Oh, Mr. Iyenga, can't he come back out of the pose?" "No, he's a teacher. He has to suffer." So the suffering was number one. The interesting part that I didn't talk about is that I was curious about the human body and about the energy lines, that I might have been able, I thought, to help my paralyzed brother if I knew about these stimulations that are possible on the nervous system. And so that was the reason for me, besides recovering from my own back problems and my weakness in the back, to understand the body deeper. And so that's what I did. And in that first class with Iyenga, he just hit my right leg in standing pose and said, "How can you ever teach a paralyzed person if you're paralyzed yourself?" I thought, gee, that guy has really some interesting things picking out of the thin air. And so it convinced me that he was more than just a yoga instructor. He was very under the influence of Krishnamurti's teaching, which is the idea that the yoga teacher and the guru is inside you, so you don't need to ask any questions outside. If you just go into the question itself, it is born out of unconscious answer, you could say. So the potentials lies within you, and I really liked these ideas. So he was also artificially humble under the influence of Krishnamurti, and said things like that the guru is within you, that the body is your temple and the asanas are your prayers, and there is no yoga ashram beside yourself, and things like that. So it sounded all kind of nice to listen to. And then he had a fallout with Krishnamurti, and boom, everything changed. He was becoming the yoga teacher and then the guru in no time. He started to build his big institute. And so it was very different suddenly. I think it was a shock to me. I think either he is more supple than I am, which was true physically, but his mind is too supple for me to follow that. So I stick to the first principles. And that created already a little bit of a strange feeling. So I think the whole path that I went through basically is why I did yoga. It's the same thing. The answer was by going inside to find out. I didn't have an obvious reason than the one that I was curious, and then that I suffered in my body, I want to study that, and that my brother suffered in his body, in his nervous system, and I want to study that one. So it's basically a study of what lives inside, the bag of my outer body. It's a long question, a long answer.
No, I knew it was a big question, but I loved how you put it all together. That was beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.